The following is a conversation. It has the features of any conversation, such as imperfectly expressed thoughts, ill-considered opinions, and the notions of several sleep-deprived brains. Try not to get your stethoscope in a twist about it.
Yeah, that's a big deal. That's high yield.
I prefer
no,
everything
like
is
Dr.
high.
does it too much. Like it's like
So that's high yield.
everything he says is high yield, which is a problem.
I hate the term high yield in med school because it's just yield at this point.
Exactly. It's like we made, it was like the first test. They're like, there's a lot of information coming at you. Know the big picture. Don't get lost in the weeds. And then the entire exam was like the weeds.
Yeah.
And ever since then, anytime somebody's like, so what do you think we need to know? All of it. Like literally all of it. Just every last bit.
Yeah.
You need to know Titan. Yeah.
No, but my favorite part is like, I have no basis making assumptions on what's going to be on the exam, but it's almost like our form of betting. Like, oh, I'm going to hedge my bet. I think that topic's going to be on the exam.
Yeah.
And that is where high yield comes from. It's just all of our different individual bets working towards a higher goal of high yield.
As well as M2s and M3s. We love to throw rumors around.
Yeah.
I'm a PA, one of the PAs, and the PA cohort would be like, you know what I heard? M3 said? M3 said that's high yield. And they'll be like, M3 said, smallpox, high yield. You'd be like, really? Yeah, there's 7 questions on the exam. And then people could come back from the liaison committees. They'll like come back with a list. They're like, all right, so we got 9 questions of histology, 18 questions on Ciplo's birds, and then 7 questions. And everybody's just like the holy grail of like, all right, waiting for the liaison. And it's just...
That was real.
That was clutch
in
last
MOHD, like one, like when the histo questions dropped, it's like, okay, how much weight am I giving this part of the unit?
How much of my life will Nathan Swales save?
Yes.
This time?
Swales should just teach everything.
Yeah.
I completely agree with that
I
statement.
love Swales so much.
I feel like the whole anatomy staff should just teach everything.
Where's his office?
I need
I was
to
just
go,
in England
thank
over
him.
break, and I brought him back a bunch of those Terry's chocolate oranges.
I bought one over break.
They're
Yeah.
delicious, and I've been meaning to give them to him, but I don't know where he is.
I believe in the basement near the anatomy lab.
They hide away all the good ones.
It's like it's one of the buildings when you're walking in the tunnel to the hospital. It's like one of those intermediate buildings.
I thought I knew all the tunnels, and I've been here for 5 years. Maybe not. That's okay.
Get to know your
There's a lot of
tunnels.
Yeah, always
How old
getting
are
to
you?
learn more.
Did you go to undergrad here and went right in?
I did my undergrad and my master's here. So I've been here for 4 years, not
Jeez.
5.
What's your master's?
Public health.
No way.
Yeah.
I was
so
actually
today's
thinking of you this
lectures.
morning during that.
Yeah, all of his lectures. When he talked about the state hygienic lab, I was like, I took a class there. Yeah, it was a fun time.
Wait, because what was your research you had? Did you call labs?
I
about-
called hospitals all throughout the state and asked them how they deliver babies.
Interesting.
And
They're
they all
like-
said very carefully.
From the bottom? I don't know.
If there was no other,
Haphazardly.
there's no other response.
I mean, they gave the right answers, I guess.
Meandering in the margins of medicine, it's the Shortcoat Podcast.
Weird news,
Fresh views
helpful clues, and interviews.
by students for students.
Subscribe to our weekly show at theshortcoat.com.
Welcome back to the Shortcoat Podcast, the show that gives you an inside look at medical school from the students drinking from that fire hose. It's a production of the University of Iowa Carver College of Medicine. I'm Dave Etler. With me today in the SCP studio, she is the one who knocks. It's M1 Radha Velamuri.
Hello.
She
Pleased to be here.
she volunteers as tribute. It's M1 Amanda Litka.
Hello, I'm also pleased to be here. First time.
$1 million isn't cool. You know what's cool? It's M1 Sri Nandakumar.
The one and only.
That was hot. Yeah, that came right off the tongue.
You merely adopted the dark. He was born in it, molded by it. He didn't see the light until he was already a man, and by then it was nothing to him but blinding. It's PA1, Connor Lizer.
Why are their introductions so much cooler than ours?
That was kind of exciting.
I don't know.
That was exciting. Exhilarating.
Because 10 minutes ago when I
Adopted
was
in the
writing
dark.
it, I was like frantic.
I feel like I deserve
You could be
a better
adopted in the dark.
Thank you.
That works.
Look, this is your second show.
Yes.
Do you remember what I
Ease
introduced
in.
you as the first time?
Vaguely.
So then, I mean, you don't care.
I do.
Amanda, welcome to the show. Where are you from? What were you doing before you came here?
I'm from Sutherland, Iowa, which I spent 6 years in Boston before this, and people were confused about where Iowa was, and now I came back to Iowa and people are confused where Sutherland is. So it's like
you can't win.
I can't win. It's like 4.5 hours northwest of here, so it's still quite a hike.
I am from the Boston area myself.
Where?
Well, I grew up on Cape Cod, actually.
I love that. I'm so jealous.
My wife is from Milton, outside of Boston.
My college roommate is from Milton.
Yeah.
Small world.
What were you doing in Boston?
I spent 4 years undergrad at Harvard, and then I spent 2 years at Boston Children's Hospital as a clinical research assistant and then coordinator.
Cool.
So,
Jeez, great rowing team.
They do. Good rowing team.
Outside of all the education.
So you grew up in Iowa. You went to Boston.
I did.
And you came back to Iowa because...
Well, one, I love the people, but a very close two, it is incredibly cheap to live here compared to literally everywhere else in the country. But I love Iowa, and it's really nice not to have to fly back and forth to see my family.
Yeah. Our family goes back and forth all the time, and it sucks. It takes all of our disposable income to go visit family.
It's one, so expensive, and two, what really got me is it's 2 flights. It's one thing if it's one flight, but like I was so sick of St. Louis, Chicago O'Hare, Minneapolis, St. Paul. I would be fine to never see any of them again.
There's no amount of money that you can pay to get a direct flight to Cedar Rapids or to Moline. It's just not a thing.
You can't even fly private, I'm pretty sure. It's unbelievable. Getting into this state, I don't want to go on. I've griped about it since I got here.
I mean, and so where I'm at in Iowa, I'm 2 hours from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and 3 hours from Omaha, Nebraska. So those were my 2 airports. So like, no one came and visited me until after we graduated college because they were like, "You're too far. Like, you're not only flying for 8 hours, then you also have to
rent a car."
Yeah, my parents were great. I'm their only child. They were pickup crew every single time. It was incredible. I'm proud of them.
Well, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you finally decided to join us, especially because I want to talk about opinions. And you may have heard the phrase, opinions are like assholes, in that everyone has at least one, though I'm not sure if medically that's
I think
true.
There could be a separation.
Is there a thing where you might not have...
where you can get a bisection of it.
Huh?
You can get 2 essentially just because of a
at least one. So that's correct.
At least, yeah.
But what if you didn't... Is it possible to live without one?
Anything is possible.
I think if you have a colostomy bag.
Anything is possible. If you don't have an ass, they'll make one. I don't know.
Okay.
Plastic surgery, I don't know.
You don't have to have one to be one, though. Yeah. So, hey.
Well, we should celebrate them. Not your ass, your opinions. We should celebrate your opinions. And I asked you to bring some hot takes about your journey thus far. Now, if you don't have one, I do have some here for you to pick randomly from and argue, even if you don't agree with it. So that's the penalty for not having come up with a med school or medicine or pre-med hot take. Are you, Connor? Do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I've got.
Connor looks like I've
got a hot take, and I didn't know what I signed up for today. Honestly, I didn't know what you were talking about. I was just like, okay,
so remember, a hot take is an almost intentional, intentional contrary opinion to it. Right.
Oh, I've got one.
Okay.
Hot take, not as bad as people say at all. And I get a lot of flack about this.
Oh, boy.
Oh, yeah. So I worked for like 5 or 6 years out of undergrad, and I worked for a startup. And then I came here, and everybody's like, God, it's so much work, and I'm always stressed. And I was like, I've slept better than I have my entire life. I get consistent. I eat when I want. All I have to do is show up and learn cool things with people who I get along with that are similar-minded. And like the busy work is minimal. Like it's nothing. And you take multiple choice exams. I honestly have had the most relaxing time I've had in forever. And for anybody who's like, that's ridiculous, just wait. Just wait until you get out in the real world.
I feel like Radha, especially for some reason, is like feeling attacked.
Yeah, it's a lot for sure, but it's like all you got to do is set a schedule and follow it and just grind through it. But that's my hot take. It's been my hot take.
Being a member of a startup is probably insane.
Well, it's just one of those. They're like, we're going to go to the moon. You're going to make so much money. Like cars, women, mansions. Like that's always like what comes out of it. And then at the end of the day, it's like, but you're going to work 100 hours. We're going to pay you absolutely nothing.
And then
we're
you
gonna
all
expect you to
burn
keep
out
doing
and
it.
you move to private equity or hedge funds.
Exactly. And I worked for a startup when we owned Group Fitness Studio. So it was like I did not have any of those technical skills at that point. So it was just like, all right, you're going to be here Saturday, right? Yeah. Okay. Sunday too. Okay. Yeah. And 5 a.m. and then we got a late thing. So it's going to be like 10, 10:30. So it's just this consistent. Yeah, it's hard work. But at the same time, it's like all you got to do is show up and they'll get you there. Hot take.
That's fair.
Anybody else want to comment on this hot take?
I agree. Low key. Sri, I'm interested.
Well, you went to Harvard.
No, but like I had to manage people. And like, I think that's my favorite thing about being in school is like, I just have to manage myself. Like when you manage people, like someone calls in sick, I worked with families. So like something's always coming up with families. I worked with kids. Something is always coming up with kids. And like, I still want to go into pediatrics and I'm excited to go into clinicals, but like, it's so nice to just have a schedule. You're responsible for yourself. Like you're not working overtime. If you are working overtime, it's just you studying in a comfortable place. And like, I didn't get paid overtime. Like I just worked on the weekends. So I actually agree with you that like, I don't agree that it's not that bad because it's still challenging, but like, I love being back in school after having worked for 2 years.
I was also a manager of people, and yeah, it's pretty hard to do that. And also, I don't know, I suppose if I was a different person, I could maintain my empathy, but sometimes I'm like, really, you're sick?
Yeah. Call me with more than 2 coughs. Yeah, you know?
I loved my RAs, and they like didn't call in sick usually, but it's just like, especially when we were working with kids, like you get burnt out. And then it's like, as a manager, you almost feel like you have to take on them being burnt out too. And I'm like, hey, I'm burnt out too, but there's no one that I can go to.
Got to be the hype squad.
Yeah, it's just like, let's keep going, guys. Let's work for basically minimum wage.
And I do have to clarify, one of the PAs, Michael Sebi, he goes by Sebi, he's got the best one. It's simple, it's not easy. Like, it's very hard. Everything we're doing is very hard, but it's just simple in the fact of it's like, you do X, you do Y, you do Z, it'll go. And I think that's the point of it.
That's a good one.
Simple, not easy.
I like that.
I feel like I don't have the right to comment necessarily too much because I haven't
have the right.
I haven't had a full-time job.
See, but the thing is, and I'm going to interrupt that because 100% you have the right, because otherwise we're all disqualified from, conjecturing different opinions. Like, I've never been in the Senate, but I will talk politics till the cows come home. And it's one of those, like, you could still, like, you have very much life experiences for what you do.
I'll amend it. I have the right, but I feel maybe it's not my place as much. I don't know. It's just, I have not had a full-time job. I have worked since I was 14 and I've had jobs on and off since then, mostly teaching. I worked as a TA for like 4 years. It was a great time. And the thing that I loved about like the working world was the monotony. I loved not having to shove my brain with new information every day. And I know that like in the working world, you still do. You still have to learn things. You have to get new skills. You have to do a bunch of things. But if I didn't have to go home. I mean, when I had other classes, I had to do that. But I could like leave work at work and then I could come home and take a break. When I'm at school and I'm specifically in medical school, I feel like I go home and there's always something to study. Yeah. There's always something to learn. There's always lectures to watch. I'm perpetually behind. If you're on top of your game and you have a schedule and you're really good at figuring out like the things you need to do to succeed, then medical school might not be super difficult for you. My roommate, she's great. She has her strict schedule. She leaves her apartment at 7:06 every morning, and it's like a second alarm for me. Bus. Yeah, I know. It's great for her, but for me, sometimes I just need to sleep an extra hour. Sometimes I need to take a nap in the middle. It's all pretty much sleep oriented. Yeah, slap, though. Yeah, but I don't really think that it's easy. I mean, I know you didn't say did you say easy per se or?
No, 100%. It's simple to follow, very hard. Not easy, but simple.
And I don't know if that sort of getting information shoved at me every day is the best for me, especially since I struggle with like memorization and things like that. I prefer getting experience on the job, which is why I'm more excited for rotations than preclinicals.
Oh,
but
for
that's
sure.
a whole other story.
And I 100% agree because I'm an idiot, like through and through. Like they let me in and they're like, I thought we said Colin, not Connor. But it's one of those. It's just like
on the acceptance form. They're like, Colin.
They're like, finders keepers, yours now. But
we'll take it.
It's 100% still one of those where it's like, they do make a good point. They're like, get very comfortable with feeling like you're always behind. And I think it's way different for different people to feel like that. Because even coming back this semester, I was like, am I feeling stressed?
It was
like,
so hard.
Because like first semester you came in hot. You're like, all right, but like you got to be on. And now they lulled us. They caught us slipping. They're like, we're gonna give you 4 weeks. Watch this. And then everybody came back, and it was the same thing. And I think it's 100% never gonna be again easy, but it's always gonna be one of those like just simple, stick to the plan. It's not gonna go well, but that's like part of it. What do you think, Sri?
Yeah, I see pros and cons to both. So before this, I was actually in a different career. I worked as an engineer for a couple of years for a defense contractor.
Oh.
Sri's got a cool life story.
Yeah. Got to hear that.
We heard about it in anatomy.
Yeah.
What was the contractor?
It was called Collins Aerospace.
Okay.
They're up in Cedar Rapids, but they're through a bunch of mergers and acquisitions. They're now part of Raytheon.
Of course. Raytheon owns absolutely
Raytheon
everything.
owns a lot of stuff. So, the company culture and stuff has changed a lot from a, small local company to
laser guided Raytheon.
Yeah, being part of a larger, global national.
Yeah.
Machine.
Military industrial complex.
Yeah, exactly. So I will say, working, my friends from my old job like to point out that I work a lot more hours and I'm paying to do so versus getting paid to work less.
Yeah, shut up, guys.
Yeah, that hurts a little bit. But
they're working for the man, though.
That's true, yeah. So as part of my job a little bit, I did, manage to some extent in the sense that some of my performance was measured on the success of other people. And that's incredibly hard.
Yeah.
When your success is measured on the performance of other people that you cannot really directly control.
Yeah.
Like you can say, okay, if I'm responsible for my own success, I put in work, I get results. I don't put in work, I don't get results. But then it's more nuanced when you're responsible for other people's performance because it's more, you can only motivate them so much to some extent.
Totally.
At the end of the
there's
day,
very few jobs I can think of out there that where your success is yours and yours alone.
Yeah.
You're an individual provider, basically.
I don't even know, like,
cog in the wheel.
Yeah, but you still have people who might work for you or people who, contract out with, like for lab services maybe, or something like that. I just imagine that there's always somebody you're depending upon.
Yeah, at least in engineering, at least in what I worked on, there's you could be a technical contributor where you're doing a lot of technical work and you get tasks and you're responsible for getting those tasks done. And a lot of it is largely individual. Mm-hmm. And then you have more of the management or, technical leads or whatever who are making sure that the project is on task, and then you're getting flack from above when you get behind on your schedule and why aren't you putting out stuff on the schedule that you said you would, what's going on. And so, it's a lot of downward pressure, upward pressure, things like that. So I guess in that sense, with medical school, you're responsible for your success alone in a way. And so, you figure out what works for you and you put in the work and presumably you get the results you want. I think in terms of schedule flexibility also, to some extent, medical school, I see that as a pro because, you have some stuff that you're required to be on campus for, but then there's more flexibility in terms of,
every day this week.
Yeah, I know. There is some flexibility on do you learn better by going to class?
Yeah.
Do you learn better by watching it from home or watching it asynchronously?
Do you learn it all?
Yeah.
Every lesson.
I ask myself
That's an important question.
Who knows until 2 days before the exam? That's when it's usually like, actually, you've learned nothing.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's when you lose sleep over it. But until then,
fine.
Stay strong.
Yeah.
Any other hot takes?
I think one of my least favorite phrases is high yield.
Oh, yeah.
And it's on par with low-hanging fruit, which I think is the corporate equivalent of high yield.
Circle back to that one.
I use low-hanging fruit all the time.
I hate that term. I hate low-hanging fruit. I hate high yield because I think it's just so subjective sometimes. And maybe I've just gotten disillusioned with the advice or rumors that I've gotten from upperclassmen. Because they said it would get better, and in my opinion, it's gotten worse.
Gotta be careful with those M2s.
They never say it gets better. They say it doesn't get better, but you get better at handling it. And sometimes that's an even worse statement.
Yeah. I was like, thank you for pulling that from whatever self-help book you just finished reading.
Yeah.
But I'd like real advice.
I think it's true, though. I do think it's true. You get better at digesting. You get better at taking in the information.
Just because
and keeping it in there. Like, that's hard to hear, I know, because it feels like impossible sometimes. But with practice comes more better.
I think I just hate that all cliches are real. Like the older I've gotten, and I'm not that old now, but I'm verging on 29, and I'm just like, ugh, like they're all real.
Yeah.
Well, just because I can tolerate a minimal amount of poison doesn't mean I want to continue increasing a dose of poison just to one day be like, hey, I'm immune to such and such.
But then you're a super person.
And then you could talk down your kids.
Yeah, you'd be like,
always
when I
that.
was a kid.
When I was a kid, we ate lead for fun. Like, I'm not going to go around saying that.
We had lead chips.
We had that conversation.
E. coli
with
was
Bean
an
the other day.
appetizer on our salad.
No, I get that though. I also feel like though that they're like maybe not like intentionally trying. Well, they're definitely not intentionally trying to mislead us, but like I genuinely think they're like kind of disillusioned because like they've blocked it out. They're like, no, it's like gone.
Yeah,
like
it's like a Stockholm
because
syndrome.
I do
kind of
that.
thing.
I do that. Like, oh, it wasn't that bad, and then I sit and ruminate with it, and I'm like, oh wait, it was. I just like decided to not remember it that terribly in order to move on with my life.
It's just
And
a
I feel
survival
that way.
mechanism.
And I feel that way sometimes about the M2s. I'm like, it probably was terrible for you in the moment, but like you experienced either better or worse, so that shaded your recollection.
Shortcoats, if this episode is worth listening to this far, it's worth sharing. So blast us on your socials. And if you want a sticker for your trouble, send us a screenshot. Thanks.
When someone tells you something is easy or hard, that's a very subjective take. And I think I've just learned to take some of those with a grain of salt, because what's easy for someone might be hard for me, or vice
That's
versa.
a superpower in med school and PA school. Just being like, distance myself from whatever you just said there.
Well, I will also say that things change from year to year. So what the current crop of M2s experience may not be exactly the same as this crop of, or the current crop of M2's experience may not be the same as what you guys are experiencing this year exactly. So for instance, I know that some of the biochem stuff changed significantly.
Oh, yeah.
For the better, I feel.
I also agree for the better.
Well, that was the goal. And yeah, and so that just means that the M2s now, if they tell you, oh, this is so hard, or you're going to have, this is high yield, maybe not so much anymore. Or maybe something else is high yield that you should be paying attention to. So I don't know. I'm totally like, take all that advice with a healthy dose of skepticism. Because,
just grain of salt it. It's like talking to people from the East Coast, you know, I just got a grain of salt. People people from New York, oh my gosh. I'm like, yeah, but with like a metric ton of grain of salt, like they'll be fine.
I mean, I would agree. I mean, Dave, you said your wife's from Milton. My roommate in my first year, freshman roommate was from Milton, and like quite possibly the most blunt person I've ever met in my entire life. And like, I realized after 6 years out there that it's not like something I've said to people here is like East Coast, West Coast, like East Coast appear harsh.
Yes.
Or like come off harsh, but they're actually like really genuine.
Yes.
But then like West Coast come off like really pleasant and genuine, but they're actually like not nice, you know? And like my experience on the East Coast was that like everybody is like, there's good in everyone.
They're honest. I lived in Philly for a summer, and
so
they explained
honest.
it to me because Philly people are, they're scratchy on the outside for sure. But they always said, they're like, you go to the Midwest, you go to Iowa and your car breaks down. Somebody pulls over like, oh my God, I can't believe your car broke down. Can I help you? Like, are you hungry? I've got cookies. Like, let me bring you to my house. You break down in, Philly or the East Coast. Like, you're an idiot. Why?
Yeah, you should have
a
gotten an
spare
oil
tire?
change.
Yeah,
What are you
moron.
doing? You ditch
Get
the
off the
pothole,
road.
and then they're like, get out of the way. I'm going to fix your tire and get you on your way. Like, they're still at the end of the day good people. They're just rough. I don't know how we got onto this, but the idea of taking people with a grain of salt, and especially here with like, especially when you come out of an exam, I stopped doing that, being like, how'd the exam go for you?
Yeah.
It was the worst. I remember the second exam I came out of, I failed the exam, and I saw a woman walking out. I was like, oh yeah, how'd the exam go? She's like, easy. And I got like a 62. And she's like, how'd it go for you? I was like, crushed it. Murdered it. 'Cause, yeah, at that point, you're just like, there's no point of asking, ever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No.
Hot
right.
take, though. High yield, hot take.
Yep. All right.
It's kind of fun though. Could just like use it in day-to-day language. Just be like, "Oh, you're going to the grocery store? Yeah, I'm getting some high yield like
Yeah.
yogurt or something." You know what I mean? It's just I just like
It's like
to,
a holiday thing.
I
You know
just
what would be high yield is if you clean the bathroom.
Yeah.
exactly. So like it's fun to use ironically, but when it's used like with literal purpose, you're just like,
Yeah, I
What
feel
is
like it's
wrong with
become
you?
part of the lexicon for med students. And I'm like,
100%.
part of me dies inside.
Yeah. and it's electric when people say it sarcastically, when they're like, oh yeah, that's high yield. Like you'd be at Chipotle and they'll be like, what would you like? And you're like, I don't know, fajitas, and the guy behind you's like, that was high yield. Good for you. Like, that's good. But when they're like, yes, this is going to be high yield this entire lecture, you're like,
I know guac costs extra, but
yeah, guac is high yield. Yeah,
It's high yield. Wow.
Do you have your hot take?
No, Radha, you can go first.
Okay, I have one that's, I don't know if this is a hot take. It's just it's an opinion that I have fostered over the last few years while preparing for medical school.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more on the pre-med process, and you said that's fair game, right?
Absolutely.
All right.
Always.
I
like it.
dislike shadowing as a concept because
That means that you dislike all of shadow.
specifically as a soft requirement to get into medical school.
Okay.
Because it is difficult to get those connections and it's not an appointment, but make this set up the sessions. But you have to know people. If it's way easier if you have connections. That's just the real world, how the real world works. But
Well, don't you just call them? Like, hey, stranger.
it's not necessarily, I don't know. I think I only ended up getting maybe 15 hours of shadowing, and that's because I had some help through a class that I took here that put you in contact with some doctors. It's really hard to cold call and get a spot, or you usually have to go through someone if you want to shadow. And then when you're there, you feel like a useless appendage. You feel like an appendix. You're just there.
But I mean, yeah, that's shadowing. You're not. You're not supposed to be like doing the surgery. That would be up.
Out of it. I was there, and I don't know. I didn't get anything out of it when I was there. I don't know how other people felt about their shadowing experiences.
So I'm gonna posit that the fact that you didn't get anything out of it is good news, because at least you didn't get out of it like, well, hell no, I don't want to be a doctor. Right?
That's true. But
because I think that's the point of shadowing, isn't to learn anything in particular other than,
do I want to do this?
Is this what I really want to do with my life? When I watch that guy or girl or woman or whatever, okay, I'm sorry. I'm having a sexism moment. I don't know.
Are you having a pica issue right now? He doesn't get that, but you three get that.
That person didn't, when I watch that person, I don't feel terrible about medicine as a career.
And that's fine. People can get those opinions, but I don't think that it should be, like I said, a soft requirement to put on your application to get into medical school. Okay. I think there's other ways to get clinical experience other than shadowing.
Here's a counter to that. Actually, you go. You had some.
Yeah. Well, see, I see the point of getting an actual feel for what the job is like. But medicine is so diverse that really, like, you shadow a hospitalist and you're like, I hate this. But you might love radiology.
Sure.
But you never saw radiology.
Yeah.
So really, what have you gained from it? I mean.
Well, that's why you shadow a bunch of different people. Look, I can argue shadowing. I can argue for shadowing all day because I feel like that's the party line. So maybe I'll
argue for it too.
Oh.
Everyone can just argue against me, and that's okay. I don't think
I'm also a devil's advocate, if that makes you feel better.
I don't think my opinion will change because I didn't have the most beneficial experiences from shadowing, but I'm sure there's people who have. I shadowed, I think, 3 different types of doctors. It was also during the pandemic. I wasn't able to get experiences in shadowing I only got what was directly available to me, which is specifically doctors that either me or someone in my family was going to for care. And I didn't get an opinion, I wasn't able to develop an opinion on a specialty that I'm interested in or anything like that from those experiences.
Yeah. I don't know how successful you would be if you went into it like, I'm going to find my specialty during shadowing. I'm not really sure that's.
Yeah, I think it's interesting during med school, when we have our early clinical experiences, those are really useful because you can see stuff, you can actually do a little bit, and you get a variety of stuff and you can figure out what is my niche, who are my people. But as a requirement to getting into med school, I think that there should be better ways to decide whether you like the medical environment than just standing in the corner and watching.
I guess I'll have a little bit of a different. I have, no offense, very little sympathy because for PA school, one of our requirements.
That's a trend.
One of our requirements is at the very least 2,000 hours of patient contact experience prior to coming in.
Shadowing.
And so it's, in my eyes, it's one of those, it's a hoop to jump through. They're like, if you can't go out of your way to find a way to make a contact, again, hot take in reverse, to find a contact, to set up a couple hours to go shadow a healthcare provider, they're like, Do you really want to be a physician?
No, but I feel like you're saying that you're both kind of saying the same thing. I think what Radha's saying is like shadowing
the utility
is just,
from it.
Yeah, like shadowing is just more useless. Like I think it's wonderful that like I honestly think there should be more requirement for some sort of not necessarily patient facing, but like work in a nonprofit or something like that. So you have some experience beforehand. Like I actually think the PA rule is like wonderful. And like I feel like it enhances your experience so much more once you get here, but then you outline like, but then like if you make that a requirement, then you put out people like Sri who like was in private, you know, that kind of thing. But I actually think what you guys do is more meaningful than shadowing, which is I think also kind of what Radha's saying is like shadowing is just kind of like there. But if you have work as like a medical scribe or even like Radha's work as a teacher, like I think there's different ways you can get to it. But I agree that shadowing can be like also super not accessible, especially during the pandemic, especially for people from lower socioeconomic status. Like when I was in college, it felt like everybody's dad, mom, grandma, etc. was a physician, or like, so they would just shadow their parents' friends. And then I'm a kid from rural Northwest Iowa that's like, I don't know anyone. So I'm right. If I'm on the in the podcast again, you'll know accessibility is one of my things, but like I think shadowing is pretty inaccessible broadly. So I actually wish there was more of an emphasis on like volunteering, nonprofit, work as a medical scribe, etc., and not to like quote unquote enhance your application, but kind of like PA school. Like no, like you need to demonstrate that you want to do something in this field first.
I also think there's tremendous value potentially in following somebody around who's not a physician, a PA, an NP, a pharmacist, you know, whatever, physical therapist, if only so that you can say, you know, I looked into these other things, and while they're all, you know, worthy ways to help people in healthcare, that's not what I wanted. I decided that wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to do this thing. Anyway, I think that's the whole intention, whether or not it's successful or not, you know.
My main argument for shadowing is purely the idea that it's just a very porous dragnet, and you say, maybe 1 in 1,000 individuals who shadow realize like, oh, this actually isn't for me. Yeah, the whole other 999,999 are all like, oh, this was a waste of time, or I forget what my initial number was. But anyways, but the whole point is you want to nip that in the bud probably 8 years prior to figuring that out and being like, I just went through all of med school and residency and realized like, because once you're in the track, I would be very intrigued to understand the true national attrition rate, to be like, how many people are just like, well, I'm already in it. Like, I'm not going to stop med school now. I'm not going to stop residency now. I agree that it's entirely like, we're all doing all this just to catch the 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 10,000. I see the different arguments for it. I'm purely being a devil's advocate because I could see the other way. But I think there has to be some more effective routes to give everybody experience to be like, 1, are you sure this is what you want to do? And 2, let's give you a little bit of understanding of like how things actually work. And I bet there's probably a better mechanism than just being like, all right, you live in rural Iowa. All right, so go 15 farms to your left and then take a right and then make a phone call and try to get somebody there to like give you shadowing hours. Like, I agree. That's tough. Especially if you're in a healthcare desert, you're like, what do I do? So,
yeah, and I think the harder part with shadowing is that it's not formalized. Like Amanda was saying, it's all connections based. And most of the people that I encountered who were shadowing were also like, yeah, like my aunt is a physician or my grandpa's a physician or whatever. And it's all like familial. And it just keeps it as a like club of people who are already in it.
I like that.
Versus if you made a requirement to be a scribe or a CNA or an MA or something like that, I feel like you get all the benefits of shadowing where you get to see the clinical environment, see whether it's for you. But it's also more equitable in the sense that it's a job. You know, you meet the requirements of the job, you can apply, and you don't have to know someone. Because you can cold call 50 people and no one's going to answer you.
Yeah. I think a challenge with that is that, and Jeff, who's always on the podcast, would argue this as well. This is one of his hot arguments usually. It's just like, for med students already, and PA students as well, there's so much we have to do going into it and then going into the actual training. So then on the flip side, it's like, okay, if we require everybody to get a job, all the training that goes into even being like a CNA, like I was a CNA for years and it was like a 3-month training process and licensure exams and all this. And then it's just like, and we need to do 50 hours of this. Then it becomes just an absolute headache. So I'm a big fan of if something seems ridiculous, somebody's probably already had the debate about it before and they've realized 10 reasons why that kind of ridiculous thing makes more sense than the alternatives. But I completely agree.
How do we know if that has actually happened?
This is classic med student right here.
You know what I mean?
This is classic.
How do
med
we know if
student.
it actually?
How do we know?
How do we know?
I think for me, if the four of us are just in a room
that we've bought into
shooting the shit right now with Dave, and we came up with it, I guarantee some very intelligent individuals in the past.
Hey, are you saying we're not intelligent?
Yeah, I object.
But I'm saying in the past 200 years of medical education and the education reform process in terms of admissions, I guarantee, and I could be wrong. It might be one of those.
I have a one-word response to that: groupthink.
Groupthink. Agreed. That's hyphenated, by the way.
If you want to go even more meta, we can talk about why do they require a whole undergraduate degree in any field of your choosing before applying to become a doctor? Some countries, it's straight out of high school.
We have a Swedish guy living us with right now, a true Swede. He was just telling us they eat reindeer on Christmas. And I was just like, that's a stereotype I'm going to run with. But he was saying in Sweden, he was like, yeah, it's a direct path.
Yeah.
They don't, he was like, yeah, you guys.
In England, in India, where I have some extended family there they're 17 and they're thinking about, I think I'm going to apply to become a doctor. And I'm like, you're 17. Do you know what you want with your life? But that's what they've ingrained in us here. But out there, it's in different countries, they're just like, this is when you choose. My dad decided at 16, he's like, I'm going to become an engineer. And he went to college for engineering and became an engineer. And it's the same process with doctors.
Yeah, it's true. We tend to think that because this is how we do it, this is the best way to do it. But.
And I think that the scope of this discussion is going to change drastically if we get far into that, because I agree, our healthcare system as a whole is just defunct. So I'd be for scrapping it, restarting, and seeing what happens there. But I think we should keep the scope to hot takes.
I mean, that brings up BSMD programs. Is that a hot take?
BSMD?
Yeah.
Yeah, they have. I
think it's
Bachelor of Science to MD. Basically,
it's a 6-year. It's a 6 to 7 year program where you're committed out of high school to become a doctor. I don't know if there's a PA version of that, but I know
Kansas City also has one.
There's a lot.
So it's a new thing? I thought you were
They have them for JD too.
Yeah, they're combined programs where you do your undergraduate and your, in this case, MD in 6 years or 7 years. I heard it's hellish, but you take a bunch of prerequisites. You don't have to take the MCAT. Some require you to take the MCAT. And I know someone who did it, and she's currently in her third year of residency, and she's, I think, 26 or 27.
So she came out of high school into this.
She came out of high school into this, and now she's going to be done with her residency before she's 30.
Yeah. Wow. On the plus side, you start earning earlier.
That's true. But also...
And I bet she didn't have to do any shadowing.
Probably
there you go.
Maybe in high school, but I don't know. I haven't talked to her in a hot minute since she's so busy.
Interesting. I mean, NYU does a 3-year accelerated MD now. They're going faster and faster, it feels like. I mean, we now do preclinical in a year and a half and a year and a half. I mean, most people say that 4th year is kind of just up in the air anyway to apply to residency because that's how it's always been done.
Amanda.
Yes.
So far, you've gotten lucky in not having a hot take. But
I do have one. It made me think of it. I'm sure I have multiple, but the one that came to the front of my mind kind of based on this is I actually think that the medical school application process is, for lack of a better term, completely dysfunctional. I think it's absolutely absurd and based on essentially nothing. And having had to make decisions on who gets into, I know this is not the same thing, but clubs in college, it can literally be as simple as how you're feeling a certain day, for the people that are making the decision. I think it's completely irrelevant. Why do you fill out one application that then it's also so inaccessible monetarily, the fact that it's $100 for one secondary application, because now everybody gets secondary applications for the most part. And then...
Oh, that's good money.
It's good money.
That's just a good revenue source.
It is incredible money. And I'm like, you're not even going to look at some of these kids' applications. And then also, there's a soft requirement to have your secondaries in within 3 weeks. if we're encouraging people to be working, shadowing, volunteering, etc., how in the F are you supposed to get all your secondaries in 3 weeks when you're working?
Yeah, and by the way, I don't think we do that here. There are secondary applications, but you only get asked to do a secondary application. Not everybody gets asked to do a secondary application.
Yeah, and not everyone. Most do.
Which is a better way to go about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I completely agree, and I just think it's not the case, really, because they can grab money like Sri was doing with the money sign, and I think it's just really...
catch it.
I think if you really look at kids who are like so... I did this with my college friends. You can ask any of them. They all know this.
And we will.
You will. So many of us went into medicine, and so many of us had severely similar stories, severely similar grades, and it's just like complete crapshoot who got in where.
Well, I think that's a reflection of how many people want to get into medicine versus how many spots there are.
And I think that's the case too, but I'm also just like, how is the system that we're using now ensuring that people are ending up at the right spot and ensuring that people who really want to go into medicine are able to get into medicine? And I think it's just like a kind of inaccessible system, especially given like that it varies from college to college or post-bac program to post-bac program, how much support you even get in it. Like then you're putting people out thousands of dollars. They don't have an advisor potentially, or companies are scamming them into paying to be advised to like edit their stuff. I just think it's kind of a messed up system. I don't like the admissions process personally. So if anybody's listening and you're applying to med school, it's going to get better and you're going to get in somewhere, and whoever accepts you wants you to be in medicine. But I just think it's kind of a irrelevant and crummy process at times.
Fair.
What would your alternative be?
I just think it needs to be more standardized. I understand that every school has its own character, every school has its own focus, etc. But like, I don't understand how it can be one centralized thing that everybody fills out, and then
except
it goes
Texas.
I was going to say
Texas, and then Texas is its own thing.
Well, Texas is talking about another slip away from the union.
They're going
right
to
now,
succeed anyway.
Honestly,
they have their own power grid.
And I should
they have
say,
their applications.
I
They can do what they
have
want.
personal beef with the Texas system because
we all do.
And my boyfriend is in Texas, and his deans were basically like, yeah, if your girlfriend wants to come to med school in Texas, she's going to have to come like live here because we're 90% in state.
Yeah.
What? Anyway.
Girlfriend owning cowboy boots?
Crazy. But it's just like, I think the fact that it goes through that very centralized standard process and then goes to an absolute, just like essentially what Dr. Cipolo was saying about how the cerebellum is just magic. And I'm never going to ask you what goes on in there. That's how I feel about the admissions process.
That's a match too.
It's a
That's a
black
whole
box.
other story.
What goes on in this process? Because all of your questions are different. Your weighting schemes must be different. Your admissions are different. And like, that's fine. But like, in the end, you're all teaching us the same damn thing. Supposed to be, according to a set of curriculum.
Yeah,
Why is it that different?
I just think in the real world, and that wasn't meant to be a condescending in the real world, but it's like, unfortunately, in the real world, you're always going to hit a point of subjectivity. And the day where it's like, here's the standard application.
Yeah, but should medicine be subjective? Probably not.
I think at the end of the day, it still becomes subjective. Until we have AI running all of our diagnostic differentials, it's still going to be subjective.
Don't even talk about that. I don't want to be put out of a job by AI.
You won't.
Not yet.
Not yet. Yeah, exactly. But I think it's...
You've got a few good years left in you.
Yes, practice until...
I've got 1 or 2 left in me. It's fine.
If Sri believes in the fact that AI won't take our jobs, I agree with him.
I think we'll be one of the last. I hope.
Radiologists,
And maybe I'm a little biased.
They've got like 7 months, maybe. But, and again, just being a normal
I'm
devil's
laughing
advocate.
because otherwise I would cry.
Yeah, it's so true.
Well, you made it to the second break. You tolerate us. If you can, consider donating or buying a sticker or something. Visit theshortcoat.com and help us do stuff without having to beg a dean for money. Thanks.
I think it's just the devil's advocate is the alternative would just be, okay, everybody fills out the same application and you really, each school does have their own mission statement. And it should be, what's our mission statement? Teach medicine, pump out doctors, pump out PAs. But I think at the end of the day, they're like, well, our school is focused on primary care because we're in Iowa and we want more individuals to go into rural medicine versus, New York Presbyterian. So they're going to have a different thing with that. And then it comes down to, okay, do you strip all that away and is there more loss than there is gain in terms of the subjectivity? And again, I'm just arguing for the sake of arguing because I agree. It's like, we went through the same thing with the PA application. You have a centralized application. Then I spent like $3,000 on supplementals.
I was about to ask, what is the PA app like?
It's the exact same thing. So we have the general application. It's called the CASPA. And then we've got all the supplemental applications. So just thousands and thousands of dollars to schools that you may never even hear back from.
You get the rejection email like 9 months later.
Yeah, and it is a
I hope you
crapshoot.
spent
It's
my
like
money already.
Yeah, and I think for PAs, each school actually has their own requirements. So it's a little bit even more fragmented.
Yeah. So like I made a list of the 256 schools in the country, a spreadsheet, and then I went piece by piece by piece and just weeded out basically because like Texas is annoying too because they're the only state in the entire country that requires a full OChem set. Every other state is like, yeah, like intro OChem, that's fine. But Texas, of course, has to be Texas.
Yeah.
Dude, they're so contrarian. It's so annoying.
But I guess, my just counterpoint is the fact of I think there's a lot of negative externalities to complete objectivity that will all of a sudden creep in. I mean, you talk about the idea of, like right now, a big issue is with the removal of affirmative action. Now, schools are saying, okay, the only way that we're able to get a true taste of an individual is through our supplemental applications, because on our main application we can't have, because there are some general applications for undergrad, or at least in Wisconsin there was, and on the main application there can't be anything about race.
Oh, trust me, I know. I'm an alumni interviewer.
Yeah, exactly. So,
I got a lecture about it.
Exactly. So you completely understand that, and without supplemental applications giving you an opportunity to do certain things that maybe it's an HBCU medical school, maybe it's a school that's out west that specifically wants to bring in a certain cohort of individuals, and I think that's removed when you make it completely objective, or that centralized application just becomes unbearingly long. Just my counterpoint.
Interesting.
I think we can make it all cheaper. That's for damn sure.
Yes, that would be nice.
But then how will the AAMC people get paid? That's my dream job.
I don't
one
give
day.
a crap how they get paid.
The what people?
The AAMC.
Oh,
the people
yeah.
who run the application.
Oh, yeah.
Are you
I mean, I used to joke that's like my dream retirement job is to work for them because they make so much money off the
I
application.
used to say that during the MCAT. I'm like, who's writing these questions? Who wakes up and says, I want to wreck some undergrad's life today with this test question?
The AAMC, the AMA, here's a fun fact that the AMA, as well as kind of the consortium of physician specialties, gives more money to Congress than the NRA. They do more money in lobbying than, I think they're number 3. The defense industry does less lobbying than healthcare.
I can't say I'm surprised.
Big Pharma, and then the AMA and specialty groups. I just looked it up the other day just so I could make an annoying argument to people. But Big Pharma, them, and then after that, our military industrial complex. We spend $1 trillion a year going into next year.
in the top 3.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
Defense
yeah, I mean,
and medicine.
I can see it because the major employer in most cities, I believe, is the hospital system. Like if you look up statistics of like who the largest employer is in most areas, it's going to be the hospital system or some kind of healthcare entity.
Also, how much lobbying does the
like that in
defense,
Walmart,
the
I
defense
think.
industry actually need to do to get
That's a
the
very
government on their
valid
side?
point. They're like, what do you mean? I have to show up to the dinner. I paid for it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that yacht I sent you and your family for the last summer.
Oh no,
I think that would be a great episode to have on the podcast. I just read, it's called An American Sickness. Jeff recommended it to me, and it is phenomenal. It's about basically the collapse of American medicine over the past 80 years, and then positive actions that can be taken to reroute things. And it's just like, the first half of the book, you're just white knuckle angry the whole time. And then the second half is like, okay, here's actionable things, but it just is so enlightening about all these factors that are at play that do truly trickle down all the way to the fact of why is it so much of a hassle for people who want to be doctors and PAs and NPs to become that? So why is it so hard to, find shadowing opportunities? Why are all these barriers to people who want to help people?
So it's a book about why we got where we are.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Hey, a lot of things in the news make me white knuckle angry nowadays.
Yeah.
Literally all of them.
Hot take. Taylor Swift is a tool of the psyops.
Oh, don't start this. God.
Vegas has already decided this. Well,
If you don't want people to descend upon you, just don't bring up Taylor Swift.
Well,
we love talking about it in Bean over the lunch hour.
I wasn't a Taylor Swift fan until recently, and I forced myself over break to I listened to a couple podcasts on Taylor Swift, read up a little bit. I brute forced it. It's not like I'm like head over heels about the music, but she is arguably the best musician and artist in the history of the United States of America based on monetary value. And
I agree on the monetary value point. Everyone has
not
their
a
own
Swift
opinion.
fan.
I'm not.
Did we talk about Taylor Swift the last time you were on the show? I feel like we've talked about Taylor Swift.
I don't know. I have different opinions on how I feel about like lyrics and music and melodies and stuff like that.
Well, how dare you?
I know. Can you imagine that?
But I agree with you.
But if we're talking purely from a commercial and how much of a global trending personality she is, incredibly successful.
Which is why the NFL immediately was like, whoa, this is the one population of viewers we've never been able to reach. And now we have it in our grasp.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah.
And they'll never let them go.
I think it was explained to me.
They're going to have to get married just for the sake of like American culture.
How embarrassing would it be to not, to have this relationship peter out after all this hoopla?
Yeah.
It's
Good luck. You know what?
Every other celebrity relationship ever.
You know what, kids? Taylor, Travis, good luck to you. You know what I'm saying? I'm rooting for you.
Go get him.
I'm rooting for him.
Just on an interpersonal, love is love. Don't listen
fog
to
up
the
those
world.
windows.
Yeah, make it happen, guys. Good luck.
Making out.
Don't listen to Vivek Ramaswamy.
This is for the greater good of the world.
Vivek, jeez. It's a whole reason why.
Now the comments are going to come.
Yeah.
We mentioned a politician.
But I think it was explained to me at what she does for women of all ages now, because I was reading an article last night, and just in the fact of like the Biden campaign is trying to really bring her in, because she gave an endorsement to the Biden campaign back in 2020 back in 2020, and they're really trying to court her now because they mentioned all these individuals who've grown up with Taylor Swift are now of voting age. And they would be, she's 264 something million followers just on Instagram. They say how much of an impact they can have. But for me, who also I'm like, it sounds like every song's a love song. But I had it explained to me, they're like, even if you think every song is a love song, there are generations of women who have been positively impacted and who have seen a female figure who is not over-sexualized, who is seen as being held to these crazy standards, but in a very open and honest way where people can relate to it and say, Taylor's talking about how she's expected to be this, that, and the other.
It's not just
and
the women.
I am too.
There's male Swifties. I like to call them Mifties.
Yeah. I mean, and also fairly likable person.
She's not controversial.
Not a weirdo. I mean, no more than any other likable person, right? Like, just, like Beyonce, like everybody, Beyonce is the queen, right?
Yeah.
Queen Bee.
But also, like, her public persona to me looks a bit forbidding. Do you know what I'm saying? Whereas, like, the Taylor Swifts and the Jennifer Lawrences and I don't know, I can't think of it. They seem like real people to me. Like, just also
Keanu Reeves.
Keanu Reeves.
We love Keanu Reeves.
Classic.
But yeah, I can get on board 100% with the Taylor in terms of the positives that she's providing to literally generations of women and, as you said, men. Even if I'm like, love song. And then you got everybody on the right who just wants to, don't let me drag on.
I just think it's a fun idea that Taylor and Travis are some sort of psyop for the Biden campaign. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I like it.
I'd be like, hey, if that was a psyop, good, smart move.
Good on you.
Somebody, and I'm sure that probably came from an actual circumstance where there's a bunch of people meeting in a room, and one of the people were like, so check this out. If we can make Taylor Swift, and now hear me out, get with Travis Kelce.
I like what you put down. Huh?
Yeah, I bet somebody at some point actually said that, and then somebody was like, yo, we're the CIA. That was a stupid idea. Stop. And then somebody got like a transcript, and now Vivek Ramaswamy's like, yeah, but, I'm betting on this.
Well,
I love America sometimes.
I know.
It's so entertaining.
It's entertaining.
No.
Scary,
it's entertaining.
Bizarre.
Do I love anything that's going on in society right now? Absolutely not. But I think it's entertaining.
Choose to keep my head in a hole, like the groundhog. It's Groundhog's Day.
I thought that was
that's
yesterday.
true.
Is
yeah,
it?
he said more winter,
It was
right?
yesterday. No, more spring. Early
no,
spring.
he said more winter.
No, he
It's
said
today,
early
February
spring.
3rd.
I don't know.
Today's
It's the second.
Isn't the second Groundhog's Day?
I don't know. When I woke
swear
up,
it
there were news
said
articles about how
there was gonna be early
the
spring.
groundhog
Early
saw its
spring.
shadow. It's early spring.
Yeah.
I like to be like the groundhog, only coming out when I'm needed.
Yes,
So
I agree.
my head's usually underground for like most of the stuff you just talked about. I know Taylor Swift
was on
exists,
here.
but nothing beyond that.
I can't find
Popped
it.
up. No, love song. Okay.
Yeah.
That's how
how I live
medical.
my life.
Honestly, Radha, that's how medical school be though. Like it's like the whole is just like education, and you have to stay in the hole, otherwise you will get severely behind even more than you already are. But then you're like, important family event. Oh hi, what's going on?
Oh my gosh.
Okay, back underground. Oh hey.
And that's a good point. I think coming into school, I told everybody, I was like I swore off social media. I call my mom like once every 2 weeks. I told everybody, I was like, I'm not going to talk to you till I have a break. And it's like, I agree that, what do you say?
What break?
Yeah. The 4 weeks where they try to trick us.
Yeah.
Try to catch us sleeping. But I think that is something where it's like, if you commit to that, it can work out, but it's kind of ridiculous that you have to commit to that. But are you making issues again?
No. Okay. I have 2 inches of space where I can move.
All right,
Can
that's
we
it.
establish
But
that?
when the show is over, I'm replacing that cable.
Thank
Okay,
you.
I'm not going to be like I'll replace it next week. I will replace it
I have
when
2
the show is
inches
over.
of wiggle room. This is all I have.
How are you supposed to
in
have
between.
animated conversations?
I don't know how close we are now. I was just about to give you shit. Now it's just like
Podcast hosts procrastinate too, just like other people.
You're so brave with
Wait,
that
can
2
I
inches.
also say that a reason I wanted to come on?
That was me to me.
Number one, Fallon Jung has told me multiple times that I should come on, but I've been listening to podcasts in the new year.
Yes.
And it
welcome.
I know it was my
It's the
first
best.
time, and I
It's a good
love
time.
it. It's like when I'm cooking, like
Anything.
anytime away from school, it's just like it's really nice. I wanted to say that when you said that about
And you can
podcasts.
learn.
My faculty director, and I think we should start this at CCOM. It might already
Start a
exist.
podcast?
No, but like a list of like recommendations. I'm a person who needs recommendations to start
Talk to
something.
me after the show.
Okay.
And my Dr. Van Hoeklum, who is my faculty mentor, was like, yeah, anytime I'm in the car, I listen to medical podcasts. It makes me feel more connected to my field, but I'm also habit stacking. Like I'm already doing something that I have to do. I'm listening to medical podcasts. And he like was going to give us a list, but I feel like that would be cool to
If you get that
distribute
list,
to CCOM.
pass that along.
Yeah.
Because I've got a list and it's just not medical, but
Yeah. I don't know. When I first
Nothing
started,
wrong with
I
that. I do. I mean, I know that medical school can be all encompassing. I think it's a good idea though to stick your head up once in a while, Radha.
I try.
I've got 3
really do.
podcasts for you and it'll change your life.
Really? I like to listen to the 10-minute, the really short ones,
Sure.
where I feel like I get a taste of society,
Yep.
but I
Not too
don't
much,
get. I'm
not too
not too
much.
involved.
Yeah.
Right.
NPR News Now, they do 5 minutes every hour.
Yeah.
I listen to it every
Consider
morning.
This is one of the ones that I've listened
Yep.
to.
Have you heard The Journal?
The TED Talks Daily.
TED Talks
Journal
Daily is
is really
good.
good.
Yeah.
Do you know The Daily by New
I've
York
heard
Times?
of it. I don't know much about
It's
it.
a little bit longer though.
Yeah, it's like
20 to
25
30
minutes, but
yeah.
it will blow.
It's amazing.
If
I
anybody
lived
needs
alone for
a-
years with this company I work for, and what do you do when you're alone? You listen to podcasts. So I got into this, and it just breaks down daily.
Sleep.
Like, it
Eat.
doesn't put even a slight candle flame to the Short Coat
There's
podcast.
you know what? There's enough love to go around for all podcasts.
So we can hype up some podcasts.
I know.
Like,
Listen-
even on this
Listen to us,
podcast.
it's like, yeah, this party's fun, but my buddy down the street's having a great. Good on you on getting on the podcast. Sure, are you a podcast guy?
Yeah.
You seem like a heady guy. I see you just
I
sitting there
like-
taking it in.
Yeah, I listen to Daily pretty regularly.
He's about that knowledge.
Yeah, I like the Daily. I used to listen to Journal, but it was just too much.
If anybody needs a feel good one, I listen to the Mel Robbins podcast.
I listen to comedy podcasts.
Oh, I love listening. I listen to comedy, like the specials that they have, where they're technically they're videos.
Sure.
But they're just standing there.
Right,
so what's the
right.
point? So I just listen to those. They're so funny.
I just feel like they're good for like cooking in the car. Like I can't do multiple things when I'm like listening to it. Like even I was trying to like write out something the other day. It was like a card and I couldn't do it listening to someone's voice.
Yeah,
but like
if you're doing something that doesn't require the,
Something really
the verbal
remedial.
centers of your brain, you're fine.
yeah.
Like cleaning has changed. I like enjoy cleaning now because I'm like, oh, you need me to clean like
I was like, that's a bit
4
of a stretch.
podcasts. Yeah. Monotonous.
There was something I was going to say.
Did you have a hot take for us?
I don't know. That was your job. Sorry.
All right.
Oh, well then
Ooh.
we succeeded.
I think you did great.
Thank you.
You did great. That's our show. Radha, Amanda, Sri, Connor. Thanks for being a part of it today.
You're welcome.
God,
Happy to be here.
That was hot. Thanks for having us.
And what kind of garbage human would I be if I didn't thank you, Shortcoats, for making us part of your week? If you're new and you like what you heard today, follow the show wherever fine podcasts are available, like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. The show is made possible by a generous donation by Carver College of Medicine, student government, and ongoing support of the writing and humanity program, and the music by Dr. Boxing Catmosphere. I'm Dave Etler saying, don't let the bastards get you down. Talk to you in 1 week.
The speed.
Gas.
The speed was so fast.
You just 2x the Panopto on that one.
Hi, Shortcoats. Look, life in medical education, life in America, life in the world is often difficult. And I often wish I could help. All I have is this podcast, but in my wildest dreams, you have the support you need to lead a life of your choosing. You deserve to be happy, healthy, and successful in whatever ways you define those words. So if you need support because you've experienced racism, discrimination, harassment, mental health crises, I want you to be able to get the help that you need. And so I'm going to put some links in the show notes to some resources that you can use. But the bottom line is that for what it's worth, I see you. I know you're out there. I wish I could do more. Maybe I can in ways that I don't understand yet or know about. But I see you, and I'm glad you're here, and other people are too. The Shortcoat Podcast is a proud member of the MedEd Media Network. Inspiration, information,